Hi boys and girls, good morning. Today our story is taken from Tek Me No Tek Me. It's a collection of Caribbean folk tales, and we will be reading a legend from Jamaica, The Legend of Martha Brae by Jean F. Forbes. Like a small creature, the Indian boy scampered across the clearing and crouched under the open window. His chocolate brown skin and shoulder-length black hair made him seem like just another shadow. The voices of the two men inside drifted out on the clear night air. "Ke, no e oro?" demanded the captain. "There is gold. I have it on good authority. Don Mendez told me, and so did Don Diego. Besides, you yourself have heard the brown heathen say as much." "Methinks, Captain, that is a pity that your informants were not more precise. How can you put faith in the words of two old men who want to impress you, or the confessions wrung from men under torture? You don't believe? What will make a man like you believe except actual discovery? Within 2 miles of this fort is a gold mine known to the natives. It is tunneled into these mountains. I will find it if I even have to kill the whole wretched tribe." The boy was listening under the window, shivering as the cool voice continued. "Esta mañana." A woman admitted that there was a mine, but she said she could not show the white men the way. The woman refused to do this even though we killed her child. All she said was that only Los Sabios may enter a mountain portal. "So who may these wise men be?" "I suppose it means they're priests, or those that serve these poor devils as such." "Do you know any of them hereabouts?" "I only know of the woman they call Martha Brae, who lives nearby. The savages revere her, but she is a witch, not a priest." "Search for her." Well, when the little boy heard that, he scampered back across the clearing and stumbled hardly through the bush and up the slopes of the steep mountain to find the cave and the worn Martha Brae. If he didn't know that the cave existed, he would have passed it, as the entrance was covered with stems of large broadleaf creepers that twined and snaked in knots and folds around it. The mouth of the sides of the cave were clothed with a wealth of ferns. To one side grew a stand of tall trees from which other vines and orchids hung. Here the boy had to stop to catch his breath and overcome the fear that clutched at his stomach. This was the dwelling place of Martha Brae, a mighty witch. Her skills in herbs and her age and wisdom gave her mighty powers. At last, taking a deep breath, the boy entered. The room of the dim cave was hung with dry herbs and the skeletons of dead animals which moved in the slight morning breeze. The boy crept fearfully past, and the 2 dogs that lay unmoving nearby. As he crept further inside, he saw Martha Brae at the far end of the cave. He saw only her back, but she reminded him of his grandmother, except that she stood erect, as if not even her advanced years could make her bow. Her white hair hung in 2 plaits and glistened in the dark cave. The boy coughed. "Yes, boy," she said without turning her head. "Spaniards are coming. They think you can lead them to the yellow metal they called oro. They love it more than anything. Today they killed more of our people hoping to find it. My sister and her baby were among those killed today. They say they will kill us all if we don't show them where it is. She told them that it was in a mountain portal that only the wise may enter, and so they're coming for you. What are we to do? We can't fight them." The words tumbled out of his mouth and ended in a wail. Martha Brae turned then. "Oh, yes we can, boy. Their weapons may be more powerful than ours, but there are other ways to fight. Go now and tell the cacique and the elders that I go to do what I must." The boy looked at the old woman and hesitated, wondering how anyone so old and frail-looking could expect to win against these mighty beings who had invaded their land. But even as the doubt flickered, it was snuffed out like a candle in the breeze by the memory of the stories about her powers. Without another word, he turned to do her bidding. But just as he reached the mouth of the cave, the boy saw the soldiers climbing up. In a flash, he squeezed behind a rock and waited. Then he crept back inside to see what was going to happen. In the dim light, he could see that Martha Brae was bent over what seemed to be a cooking pot. Neither by sound nor motion did she give any evidence that she knew the Spaniards had invaded her cave. "The white man speaks with Martha Brae. Gonzales, the sergeant, spoke in Spanish. Aye, Martha Brae answered without turning around. Vexed by her lack of respect, the captain drew his sword, but the sergeant whispered, If you kill her, farewell to hell all. Woman, the captain is speaking to you, the sergeant tried again. Aye, came the reply. By now, Gonzales was vexed, so he shouted, Capitan te habla! Aye, replied Martha Brae. She still had not turned around. Woman, the sergeant now used the native tongue. Martha Brae, daughter of the West, woman of many summers, who walks in the shadow and knows the ways of the forest, who waits by the water when darkness broods on the face of the flood, who talks to the fall of the air and the animals, and calls to the fishes bending over the blue depths of the pools. O woman, Martha Brae, the white man wishes to speak to you. What seeks the leader of the white men? He seeks to enter the passage that goes into the mountain's bowels. Through this mysterious portal, he's asking you to lead him. What does the white man seek in these mountains that he must enter the mysterious portal? Gonzales paused for a second so he could think of a lie. Then he continued. The white man seeks but to view the strange wonders of the mountain. Aye, I will lead him there. Then Martha Brae turned, and picking up her staff, she led the Spaniards from her cave. After a while, the boy followed them. First they went to the fort, where the captain summoned 6 soldiers to go with them. The boy continued to follow them. He looked up and noticed that the black rain clouds hung low over the mountain, hiding much of the light. Still, this did not seem to trouble the old Indian woman, as she led the Spaniards along the banks of the river the Tanos called Melia. The bank was shaded by the whispering bamboos, whose lacy shadows shifted as the wind moved their giant stalks. The boy was relieved when he got beyond the shadowy bamboo forest with its mysterious creaks and moans. Still, they followed the river, as it wound its way along the steep boulder-filled mountain valley. The river was low as the rains had not yet swollen it, but high above the heads of Martha Brae and the Spanish shoulders, the rocks show where the marks when the river rose in an angry flood. The boy crept closer just in time to hear Martha Brae ask that only the sergeant and the captain follow her. The captain looked around. The path ahead led straight into the bowels of the mountain. It was surrounded by cliffs and boulders. Except for the soldiers, he saw no one. He didn't think there was any chance of treachery, so he agreed. The little Indian boy was now trapped. The soldiers who were left behind would prevent him from following Martha Brae and the captain. He badly wanted to see what would happen. He looked around for a way to get inside the mountain without being seen. Then he decided to climb up over these boulders to a track high above the riverbank. The dense forest would hide him from the soldiers. He could climb back down and slip in through a narrow path that wound down the hillside. Sliding like the yellow snake, he quietly went past the waiting soldiers. By the time he could enter the cave, Martha Brae, the captain, and the sergeant were way ahead of him. He had to move quickly to catch up with them as they moved deep inside the mountain. He tried to follow the light of the torches they were carrying as Martha Brae led the 2 Spaniards up a steep sandy passage. No one spoke. The silence was like a blanket that smothered every sound. Even the weird rock formations that glistened moistly in the cave seemed to be enforcing the silence. Suddenly, the air was filled with the flapping of wings and the shrill shrieking of bats disturbed by the light from the torches. His own heart pounding, the boy could see the Spaniards glancing nervously behind them. Yet they said nothing. Still, Martha Brae led them on, but now the ground was solid and echoed the sound of the soldiers' boots. Suddenly, the captain called out to Gonzales. Immediately, the words were thrown back at him. At first, in tones of thunder, then softer and softer until they sighed themselves away in the hovering darkness. The captain shut up. He didn't want to awaken any sleeping spirits. But before he could recover, the ground beneath their feet started to shake and their torches fell and went out. Waves of darkness rolled in. In fright, Gonzales cried out, and the cave walls echoed his words like the mocking demon chorus. Even as the little boy shook with fear and clung to the trembling rock behind which he was hiding, they all heard Martha Brae's footsteps fading in the distance. Afraid to lose her, the Spaniards hurriedly groped for their torches and relit them. In his haste, the captain tripped and fell over something in his path. In the light of the torch, the captain saw that he had fallen over a skeleton. He screamed with terror as the cold bony arms of the skeleton clung to him. As before, the walls repeated his shrieks until they stopped and they became whispers swallowed by the darkness. The echoes had hardly died away when the earth once again started rocking and shaking. This was accompanied by a horrible rattling sound. "Los Diablos," muttered Gonzales. The Spaniards and the little boy too turned cold and pale as the light showed them where they were. They were standing in a wide cavern, around which, sitting or lying, were countless skeletons. This was what had caused the rattling during the earthquake. They were in the cavern used for the burial of the dead, a sacred place where only Indian priests and holy ones should go. Sweat rolled down their faces. All at once, Martha Brae raised herself from the floor where she had been thrown. "Kosia kolo, kosia kolo, kosia kolo," she wailed, and the cavern walls faithfully repeated the mighty lament. The dog that had followed his mistress raised his head and howled as his mistress once again bowed and raised her head to repeat her cry. The terrified sergeant raised his sword and chopped open the dog's head. "Silencio, silencio," he hissed. "Silence, you she-devil, or I will break your head open too." But Martha Brae did not pay him any mind. Instead, she seemed to be listening as the awful silence settled once again. Then her face lit up with joy. "Melia, Melia," she cried, and once again the cavern of the dead echoed her cries. "¿Qué pasa?" cried the captain through chattering teeth. But the boy had had enough of the death cavern. He turned and fled, just as a sound like a distant thunder echoed through the caves. Gonzales too started running. He understood what Melia meant. The river was flooding. "The river course had changed," he shouted as he raced for the entrance. The captain followed. Their terror of the supernatural paled before the real terror of the swollen river roaring and crashing its way behind them. Onward, out of the horrible death cave they rushed, pursued by the rushing river. The boy reached the mouth of the cave first, and he climbed up the way he had come. Gonzales followed, then the captain. They sprang madly for the opening, but they ran down the path they knew. They were followed by the angry foaming water. They emerged a few feet from the bank and tried to reach it, but they were overtaken and poured toward the center of the madly boiling mix of water, mud, and rocks, foaming down the rocky rapids that had been the path they had climbed such a short time before. From his place of safety on the hillside, the Indian boy watched grimly as the other soldiers were also caught and carried away by the angry swollen river. Then he turned to go to the cacique and the elders. He knew he need not wait. Martha Brae was gone. She had turned into the angry foaming river that had destroyed the enemy. That's how the river became Martha Brae. The end.